Hi, friends. Today I am going to be having an open and honest chat with you all about a topic that is really close to my heart, which is my journey with my body and learning to feel more comfortable in my skin. So, before we start, I just wanted to say that this is not going to be a how to video. I'm not going to be giving step by step instructions or telling anyone what to do because I think everybody's journey with their body is so unique, and I'm just here to share my own personal experiences and be vulnerable and honest with you about what my journey has looked like and how I have grown and changed over time. So, also, I just wanted to mention that I will be discussing body image and self esteem in this video, and I also will be having some brief mentions of weight loss and weight gain. And I know that these topics can be triggering for some people, so please take care of yourself while you watch. And if you are feeling vulnerable or sensitive today, feel free to skip this video entirely or come back to it whenever you feel ready, because your mental health is important and I want you to feel safe whenever you're watching. With that being said, let's dive in. So, growing up when I was really young, my body was just my body. It was a place for me to explore and something that helped me climb trees and helped me play with toys. It was something that was very innocent, and my connection to my body was very natural. And I didn't really understand yet the idea about body image or the ideals or expectations that are placed on us when it comes to society and how we exist in the world in our bodies. And so, in the first few years of my life, I had this very innocent and natural connection with my body. And slowly over time, I started to become more aware of my body and the way that people spoke about my body or spoke about each other's bodies and kind of those societal expectations. It did not happen all at once for me. I definitely started to become more aware slowly over time. And I can remember being 6 years old and riding on the bus with my friend that was 2 years older than me. And I can remember telling her about how I wanted to shave my legs because I thought they were too hairy. And she was trying to tell me that I was only 6 and that I didn't need to worry about that yet. And so I definitely started getting that kind of awareness of how our bodies are perceived in society. Definitely by the time I was like 6 or 7, but I was still very innocent. I didn't really understand it in its fullness yet. I remember being like 8 and 9 years old and getting dress coded at school, and the way that like the teachers and adults would talk about my clothes and kind of sexualizing my body. I didn't understand that yet because I was very innocent. I didn't understand how the clothes I wore could be perceived a certain way just because I'm a girl or things like that. So, I slowly became more aware as time went on, and I think by the time that I was 10 years old, I really had a strong grasp on, the idea of beauty standards and beauty and the expectations to fit our bodies into a certain mold. I didn't yet struggle with my self-esteem. In fact, I felt very beautiful in that time, but it wasn't the kind of beauty or confidence that comes from within. It was very much based on external validation. I remember that my mother would praise my looks a lot, but it would always be in the context of comparing me to my peers and putting my classmates down for their appearance. And so, because of that, I felt beautiful because I was receiving praise for my appearance, but I also was very aware of the fact that I was receiving positive feedback because I was fitting the standard, and that if I didn't fit the standard, I would no longer receive that positive feedback. So my self esteem became very tied to my appearance, and my self worth became very tied to fitting the beauty standard. And so that really kind of set me up for later when I entered my teenage years. I really struggled with my self-esteem. So because my confidence and my self-esteem was so tied into fitting the beauty standards, as soon as I started to no longer fit the beauty standards, I suddenly had no self-worth. When I was a teenager, my body was changing so much and I struggled with really bad acne, and I had stretch marks now because my body was changing, and I was also extremely underweight because I had health problems that I was dealing with, and this was in the 2010s when like this slim, thick body type was really the ideal. And so then I started getting bullied for my weight and for being flat chested and having no curves. And so I suddenly thought that I was the ugliest person ever born, and I hated my appearance so much. I hated my acne, I hated my stretch marks, I hated how thin I was, and I just felt no self-worth and no self-esteem. So throughout my teenage years, my self-esteem really fluctuated, and it was entirely dependent on how much I felt like I was fitting the beauty standard at the time. And so if I had a haircut that I felt was flattering, or I was wearing clothes that I felt like were in style, my self-esteem would improve. But if I had more acne or I got new stretch marks, my self-esteem would decrease. And so I had this very rocky sense of confidence in my appearance. It was entirely based on how much I was meeting this external goal at the moment. And I kind of carried that into my early 20s, and I was trying to work on my self-esteem. I was trying to feel more confident, and I started to really explore how much I was tying my self-worth to my looks and how much my appearance was externally validated. So, as I started going through my early 20s, I also was starting to get a lot healthier from the health issues that I struggled with as a teenager. And so I actually gained quite a lot of weight. And at first, I was really happy about this because I had been bullied so much for being underweight during my teenage years. So I was so excited to be at a healthy weight for the first time in my life and to fill out my clothes and to have curves. And I've always thought that curvy women were so beautiful. So I was so excited about this. But then something happened, and it's like a flip switched in my mind, and suddenly my self-esteem dropped to the absolute worst it had ever been. I felt so terrible in my body. I couldn't cope with how my body was changing, and I started really reflecting on that and why that was. As I started reflecting on this and trying to explore why my self-esteem was so low, I had a realization that every time I was looking in the mirror and seeing my body in its new weight, I felt like I was looking at my mother's body, because my body at that point looked so similar to how her body looked when I was young. And I realized that I had grown up watching her struggle with body dysmorphia and be incredibly cruel to herself because of her appearance and incredibly negative to other people because of their appearance. And at the time, I did not think that that had impacted me subconsciously. But now that I had arrived to this weight that was very similar to hers, suddenly it was like it had activated these memories. And all I was thinking in my mind every time I saw myself was the same things that I had heard her say about herself and other people. I had this really, really mean inner critic in my mind, and that my mind was not a nice place to be. And every time I looked in the mirror, I would think the cruelest things about myself. I thought that I was so ugly and worthless and not worthy of anything good. And so I kind of realized that at that point, the voice inside my head wasn't even coming in my own voice. It was coming in her voice and the things that she would say about herself. And I was just parroting that and repeating that to my own self every single day. And I really struggled during this period. I really had so much trouble trying to be kind to myself and meet myself with compassion. But once I realized what was going on, I had to just start trying to meet those parts of me with compassion and meet those parts of myself with love and tenderness. And it was a really big struggle, and for a couple of years I just had to slowly start rewriting my mindset and my thoughts. And every time I had a mean thought about my appearance, which was honestly all day every day, but every time that I had a mean thought, I had to just be aware of it and interrupt it and shift my thoughts to something that was neutral or something that was compassionate towards myself. And it didn't help overnight. It took a really long time, but I just kept very diligently being aware of my thoughts and interrupting those thoughts that were negative and cruel to myself, and just replacing them with something that was compassionate or at least neutral. And over time, that cruel voice became quieter and quieter and quieter. And now it's at the point where I don't struggle with that voice every day. There are still times when I get triggered and I think negative things about myself, but for the most part, every day I don't feel those kind of intrusive thoughts about myself anymore, because I very slowly met those parts of myself with compassion and with kindness, and I very slowly shifted my kind of baseline thoughts to something that is compassionate towards myself rather than tearing myself apart for my appearance. So, as I was working on unraveling this inner critic, I also started exploring the ways that I present myself in the world, and also exploring areas of my body that I felt shame around, and trying to liberate myself from that shame and find ways that I can learn to show up and present myself in a way that feels true to me. So, one area for me that I held a lot of shame around was my body hair, and I didn't really realize it until there was one incident where I was incredibly sick for days, and I couldn't even really get out of bed. I couldn't really even get dressed. I couldn't cook. I couldn't do anything. I was so sick and so ill. And I had managed to be able to finally take a bath, and I was taking a bath. And while I was taking a bath, I was shaving my legs, and I had this moment of realization that dawned on me, where I realized that I was so ill, I was so sick, I couldn't even get into the bathtub without help. And yet, the tiny energy, the little bit of energy that I did have, I was spending on shaving my legs. And I realized that I didn't even care about shaving my legs. The only reason why I was doing it is because I felt like I was dirty or disgusting if I didn't. And I know for lots of people, some people choose to shave and some people choose not to, and it's completely their preference and their choice. But I realized that for me, it wasn't my preference or my choice, because it wasn't truly my preference if the alternate was feeling disgusted with myself. And so I realized that the only reason I was motivated to do this is because I felt ashamed of having body hair. And so after that, I decided that I was going to go the whole summer without shaving. And I gave myself this challenge because I wanted to get to the point where I could feel truly comfortable with my body hair and no longer feel shame around it. And then once I got to that point, I would be able to choose if I wanted to shave or not. And at that point, it would truly be my choice, because I wouldn't be motivated by shame. And so I did that. I went the whole summer without shaving my legs, and it was a really interesting experience because I realized how much I had been taught as a child that women's body hair is dirty, it's unhygienic, and I had never seen a positive representation of a woman with body hair ever as a child. I had never seen that as a positive thing. And so I was exploring this part of me that I had felt so much shame around. And once I went that summer without shaving my legs, I never went back. I think I shaved my legs like one or two more times just to kind of see how I felt about it and how I liked it. But I've never gone back, because I realized once I had eradicated that shame, I realized it wasn't actually my genuine preference. And like I said, I know for lots of people it is their genuine preference, but it just wasn't for me. I was only doing it because of shame. And I remember that once I had first, kind of had my leg hair, I was really scared to go out in public. I was afraid that people would stare at me, that people would laugh at me. And so I wore tights for a really long time, when I would go out in public, but eventually I just stopped and I started wearing shorts and I started wearing skirts, and I realized that nobody really noticed. I don't think anybody cared. I think that everyone was just too busy living their own lives to care about whether I shaved my legs or not. And that was really comforting to see that I can choose to present myself in certain ways and I don't have to be bound by hiding things about myself out of shame or presenting myself in a certain way because I'm ashamed of the alternate. I also did this same experiment with makeup. I've never been somebody who felt like they were embarrassed to wear no makeup out in public, and so I didn't think that I had a lot of shame around makeup, but I still wanted to deconstruct it just in case. And so I challenged myself to go a whole year without wearing any makeup just to make sure that I didn't have any shame around my natural bare face. And so I went a whole year wearing no makeup to work, no makeup to events, no makeup at all ever. I didn't even own any at that point. I had gotten rid of it all. And from that experiment, I realized that I do enjoy wearing makeup and it's not out of shame. I go to the stores, I go to work, I go to events all the time and I don't wear makeup, but I do enjoy it as a form of creativity, as a form of self-expression, and it's not for other people. It's not because I feel ashamed of my natural face. It's just genuinely because it's fun for me. I love expressing myself and just letting my inner child play with colors and with textures and just having fun with my makeup looks. And so it was really nice for me to go through that process of taking that break to really deconstruct and make sure that my motivations for what I'm doing is based on my genuine preferences and not on shame. And each time I've done that, it has improved my self-esteem so much because I am making the active choice to present myself to the world in a way that is aligned with my inner self and the way that I want to present myself to the world, rather than the way that I feel pressured to present myself to the world. I have also been going through the process for the last few years of exploring fashion and exploring the way that I want to express myself through clothing, and that has been a really fun journey that I'm still on. And I've realized that there was sometimes ways that I would dress and present myself because I felt pressured to dress that way rather than it expressing the way that I actually want to present myself with my clothing. And so that has also been a really fun process of learning to just find those pockets of shame and find those places where I feel pressured to show up in a certain way or I feel ashamed about the way that I look, and explore that and meet that with love and deconstruct that and find the ways that I actually want to present myself in a way that reflects who I am and reflects my creativity and reflects my personality and how I want to truly show up in the world. For me, it's become a form of self-love and a form of self-expression rather than a way to force myself to shrink to fit a specific mold. And so as I've been on this journey, I've also reflected a lot about what does beauty mean and how do I define beauty. And there's this quote that I read once and it talked about the beauty industry. And it said that the beauty industry is not actually the beauty industry, it is the appearance industry. And beauty is something far greater than that. Beauty is a spiritual thing. And I've really clung on to that because it resonates a lot with how I feel about the world. I think that beauty is something that is a spiritual thing. It's when we go outside and we look at sunsets and we look at flowers and we see the sun shine through the leaves and we feel that awe and that joy and that beauty. And that is something that we are all naturally drawn to. And so beauty is not vanity. It's not something that is bad to want to enjoy and to want to be around beautiful environments and to make our environment beautiful and to decorate ourselves and cultivate beauty within ourselves. Beauty, or the concept of beauty, has been co-opted by the appearance industry as a tool to make us hate ourselves, as a tool to make us feel insecure so that we'll buy products that will make us feel better about ourselves. And so Once I started thinking about that and reflecting on that, I realized how beauty is woven into everything. And I truly see the beauty and the sacredness in all things, in the trees and the flowers and rainbows and sunsets and the cycles of life and death and earthworms, and all of these things are so beautiful. And then I started thinking, why do we separate ourselves from that? Why do we go outside and we see the beauty of the world around us, but then when we look at ourselves, we separate ourselves from that and we say that we're not beautiful unless we fit a specific mold? Because when we go outside and we look at trees, we don't have a specific standard of what a tree should look like, and we start applying that to every tree we look at. We don't look at every tree that we walk by and say, well, this tree has too many branches, this tree doesn't have enough branches, this tree is too dark or too light or too short or whatever. We don't do that. We just look at trees and we enjoy them for what they are. It's trees, and none of them look exactly the same as one another. And we don't put this kind of standard on them that they must conform to a certain way of being. And so, why do we do that with ourselves? Why do we separate ourselves from the beauty and the sacredness that is inherent in all things? And once I started thinking about that, I decided that I don't want to live my life viewing any person as anything less than beautiful. That every single one of us is inherently beautiful because we are part of the beauty and the sacredness of life itself. And it does not matter about these external standards that are put on us, because those ideas aren't ideas of true beauty. True beauty is the sacredness that is in all things. True beauty is the fact that we're alive, and that in itself is a miracle, and that in itself is beautiful. And so once I realized that, I decided that I was going to cherish the beauty in every single thing, including every single person and myself. And so now I've found the joy in wearing different outfits. I've found the joy in trying out new hairstyles or trying different makeup looks on myself, because it's not about trying to fit a certain mold. It's just about having fun and exploring and being creative. So now when I look back at my journey of learning to accept my body and I think back to my 18-year-old self, I realized that when I was 18, I objectively fit the beauty standards so much more than I do now, because I was trying so hard to fit into it. And yet now I feel so much more beautiful than I ever did back then. And that's because my self-esteem and my self-worth is tied to things beyond my physical appearance, and my love of my appearance is not tied to external validation. It's tied to my own joy and my own self-compassion and acknowledging myself as a part of life and how beautiful and special that is. So that has been my journey. It has been one of learning and struggling and growing, and ultimately of returning to self-love. And I don't want to imply that I have magically cracked the code and now I 100% feel confident every single day, all day, because that is not realistic. And I definitely have days where those intrusive negative thoughts kind of creep up, where I get triggered and my inner critic starts talking again. It's definitely up and down, and I think it probably will be forever. I think that it's never a destination. I think that we all will have ups and downs. But overall, I have created this foundation of self-love and self-compassion. And ultimately, I've realized that my body is my home, and it deserves love and kindness and self-respect. And so if there is anything that you take away from this video, I hope it is that you are worthy of love and acceptance exactly as you are right now. Your body does not have to be perfect in order for you to be worthy of love, and your body is your home. It is so deserving of kindness. Body acceptance is a journey for all of us, and wherever you are on the path, it is okay. It is okay if you are struggling with your body right now. You are worthy exactly as you are. It carries me through every moment. It holds the weight of my life, freckles from summer days spent in the sun, wrinkles from the times I've laughed and cried, a record of all the ways I've lived and loved. It speaks in whispers of strength, of resilience, of stories untold. For so long, I fought to mold it, to fit it into a shape that wasn't mine. But now, I see it for what it truly is: a home, a sanctuary, perfect in its imperfection, worthy of love simply because it is.